Do you have a story to share with the world? Of course you do. We all have stories to share. An Anchor podcast allows you to share your interests in a way that connects to others all across the globe. If you have been considering starting your own podcast and don't know where to begin, Anchor makes it easy to record, edit, and publish with the click of a button. You can even add music. Whether it's crime dramas, self-improvement, paranormal adventures, or tips about parenting, you too can share your unique imprint on the world. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. You've got this. I believe in you. Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tools and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. Welcome back, everyone. I have Lauren Fonvielle here with me today. Lauren is an integrative energy practitioner who specializes in EFT tapping, the emotional freedom technique, which is what I do as well. So we thought we would come together today to talk about the emotional health and the financial wealth connection and how our emotional health can influence our financial well-being. So welcome, Lauren. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me today.
So there are so many different avenues that we can take with this show today. And I always like to leave it up to the energy to see where it goes. And so, when we're working with our clients, utilizing EFT tapping, oftentimes we're going back to childhood programs. So I guess we could probably start there because most of our money issues start from our childhood programs. At least that's been my experience. And we can correlate that with our emotional well-being as well and kind of tie that in. So, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how our childhood beliefs and the programming around our finances can directly influence our lives. So what types of things, have you seen, with your clients or that you can share that can help people in this area if they are struggling with finances?
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic, and to think about how these beliefs that are our parents' beliefs, we then take on as our beliefs, and they aren't necessarily true. And I know that in my childhood, it was both of my parents worked, and it was this idea that work is hard. You work hard so that you can enjoy the nice things in life, but not that work is fun or work is enjoyable. Work is work.
Yeah, you got to bust it to get to make any money, so then you can enjoy your 1 week of vacation every year, right?
So I had to do a lot of my own work around that, and it's funny. I was just having a conversation with somebody yesterday about how I was giving her props because both of her kids had gone into college to do things in the arts. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's so awesome when parents are able to support their kids when they're making that sort of choice, because, my parents were like, oh no, you're not getting, anything in the arts. No, we're going business,
You're like, you're going to make money off of whatever you're going to college for. So you can, number one, pay it off and then have a substantial living after you get out of school.
As a parent, it's like, I can understand you want your kid to be able to be successful, but at the same time, you want them to enjoy what it is that they're doing, And I think about my sister, who my dad was like, absolutely not. You can't change your major to graphic design. She wanted to switch from business to graphic design,
which is a great area. Yeah.
He's like, no, you need to stay in business and you can get a minor in that or whatever. And then she went on to become a photographer, right? So she's a full-time photographer with a very successful business now, and ended up utilizing the skills that would have even served her more if she had majored in it. But yeah, so it's interesting how we have to come to terms with how our parents' beliefs aren't necessarily the truth. It was their truth perhaps, but it doesn't have to be our truth.
Exactly. And that ancestral kind of lineage. And it's funny, I was doing a meditation this morning, and I usually meditate on my shows to see, okay, what information is going to come through. And immediately I got how our ancestors worked really, really hard to make money, and how seasonal shifts would cause abundance or lack. So as we're moving into, in the States, we're moving into autumn, which is more of a harvest season where we harvest things, we feel prosperous, we feel abundant. But then we move into the winter months where we felt lack, we felt scarcity, we felt it was more difficult to find food, to do certain things, for the business. And so this has been a generational programming that goes back many generations. And so it's like, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to compete with, with my ancestors back in the early 1400s that were struggling to, to get food, in the winter, where then I can just go to the store, but yet I am still in my energetic body carrying those limited belief systems because it's something that is ingrained in my DNA through epigenetics that has been kind of passed down. And so, those are things that we don't even recognize until we tap into the subconscious mind. And when we're using EFT tapping and we're going down deeper into the root of things, and we often can find that it's not even our lifetime, it's our parents, it's our grandparents, it's our grandparents' grandparents, that goes back so deep, right? And you're like, oh man, I would have never guessed this in my life, that my issues around finances would have to be, could have been started way back with my, 14th grandmother removed. I don't know, all the way back, right? So, and that can be very overwhelming at times because you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And then specifically with the female side of it too, that feminine energy, that receiving energy, we've been kind of trained as a society to be in the masculine, which is more of that giving, that doing, that action, but which is good and okay, but there needs to be a balance, with that. So a lot of my female clients are like, give, 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 give. And I'm like, okay, it's time to balance those energies out. So so when it comes to our emotions and how we relate to that, and so like your sister's story, that pressure from your parents of and it's really coming from a place of love. They want her to succeed, right? They want her to live a life of abundance and prosperity, but they're pressuring her based off of their own upbringing and how they have moved, through that process. So what is some advice that you can give to people that might be feeling that pressure from their family or from their friends, and maybe they're just going off to college, or maybe they don't want to go to college. I mean, that's another thing, is being pressured into that. So what is some advice? Maybe you've seen this with your clients that, oh my gosh, I'm noticing patterns that they've picked up in their family line that now they're trying to break.
Yeah. I mean, I think of a client that came to me who had her own ophthalmology business, right? So went to school, had a practice, but she wasn't happy. Mm-hmm. Like, this was not what she wanted to do, but she made the decisions to do this based on what her family was pushing her to do. And so, she knew she was unhappy, but she didn't really know why. She had all these feelings of anger that had to do with, some other things that had gone on in her life. And ultimately, she decided to go back to school to become a lawyer because that's what she really wanted to do. Oh. Yeah. I mean, wild, right? Like, but she didn't do that because of everything else that everybody else had said. And so I think it's really a process of learning how to tune in to yourself, really being able to quiet the chaos of the outside world so that you can tune in to your inside world, because it's so easy to let the chaos of everything that's going on around you impact how you feel, impact the decisions that you make. But knowing that when we can really nourish that internal self, that can impact our external world and how we show up and how we are able to enjoy our days, right? And so, there's obviously all sorts of different tools that can help you to do that. And it's been, for me at least, a practice of figuring out what tools really help me do that the most. And for me, it is tapping, it is meditation, journaling, yoga, And so, I always just encourage people to explore these different modalities, whatever is making itself known in your world, whether it's like, you read a book and it mentions it, and then you happen to see a TV show that mentions it, and you're like, oh, maybe I should check that out, but you're not doing it for whatever reason, you're putting it off. Like, stop putting it off. That those little nudges, those little signs are coming up for a reason, and go figure out what that reason is. And that's what I would tell people. Be aware of what's going on, and then don't be scared to explore these different avenues.
Exactly. And another little tidbit of advice based off of my experience is don't get stuck in one modality, because that's where I got caught up in that. I'm like, okay, EFT tapping is going to work every time, which it does, to a certain extent. But then I started to branch out and learn other modalities where I could use EFT tapping with the modality. And then I began to notice that my healing, my clients' healing got even deeper. So I think, many of us we get stuck, and then we're like, it's like you just get on this one-way street, and you're like, no, there's so many areas that we can branch off into. And it's almost like it's just like this building block of each. It's not like you're letting go of the modality. You're just being able to incorporate it or use it in a different way. Like for me, when I do my quantum healing hypnosis sessions, I actually do tapping in the sessions when the people are in the theta state. And so it's like, I would have never imagined that I could do that, deeper into that process. So yeah, I think it's, and I noticed that I would learn a modality, and then I was like, this is the end all be all, this is amazing. And then I would realize it's not working. But then it was like the universe's way of kind of nudging me and pushing me, hey, go over here and learn a little bit more about the brainwave states, or go over here and learn, a little bit more about the meridians. And, and I'm like, okay, but then that's where EFT tapping can come in, because then you can utilize that in all of these different areas and make it even more, healing and impactful. And that's amazing. And I think too, your sister's example, she followed her joy. And I do think joy is a vibration. It's a frequency. And when we align with our joy, we naturally align with our abundance, because they're in the same, they're in that same category, that same frequency. So when we enjoy what we're doing and we have the passion behind it, naturally we're going to tune in to abundance. But if you have a job that you hate and you're miserable every day and you're dragging yourself to get there, and then you're questioning, why am I not getting a raise? Why am I not, why am I have the same salary? It's because you're not in that frequency, and so it might be time to kind of look elsewhere, and then ask yourself, am I doing a job that maybe my parents had pushed me into, or that I felt like, my siblings had done or moved into? But that's some really good advice, Lauren. I think, just being able to follow your passions and your dreams and shut off the external of what everybody else thinks, because it's just their perspective, right?
Right.
Yeah. And
you're the one living your life, they're not living it for you. So you
exactly.
gotta,
yeah. So, I think too, that negative self-talk, when, I came from corporate environment and left and started my own business and started doing, the energy healing and whatnot. And at first it was like, oh my gosh, I went from corporate healthcare, traditional medicine, to something that's a little bit more outside of the box. And just my belief systems alone, I had to kind of move through those, let alone everyone else around me. Right. So it can cause restrictions or, stress or frustration when you first decide to shift careers or shift jobs, and that's why it's so important to stick with, okay, what is my heart telling me to do? Because if your heart's telling you to do it, then you're passionate about it. And when you're passionate, you're going to believe in yourself more, when you actually love what you're doing. So, what is some advice that you can give to people that, maybe they're in a job that they hate and they want to follow their dreams? Like, what are some good, maybe affirmations or even EFT tapping statements that could help, people move out of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's important when you're doing that too, or when you're in that discovery phase of figuring out what it is that you want to do, and maybe you aren't super confident on sharing it with the world. Like what you said made me think about, when because I too was in like the corporate world, and I started getting really into, energy work. And it was scary for me to kind of come out of the, energy spiritual closet and start sharing this stuff. And I was still in that beginner phase, right? And so I wasn't really confident in sharing it because I did have I would feel bad when people would roll their eyes or be like, oh, that's some woo woo crazy
Woo,
stuff.
yeah.
And I remember I had first told friends, because at the time I recently become a Reiki practitioner, and I was telling friends about it, and they were like, yeah, that's some crazy-ish. And and I would say for people in that beginner phase, like, you don't have to go telling everybody. You don't have to share it with everybody until you're really comfortable and confident. And it's probably better to hold off.
Live two different lives. It's okay. It's okay.
Okay, like, you can still have your truth, and maybe you share it with someone who that's going to be supportive, right? But, like, don't expect to have your even good friends. Sometimes they don't necessarily they don't necessarily mean to not be supportive, but, like, the things that can come out of their mouths can be very upsetting, and then make you doubt what it is that you're going to do. So kind of treat whatever it is that you're exploring at the time, like, with some extra love and care, and know that it can be your thing for now, and you don't have to be sharing it publicly with anyone. And then as far as tapping phrases, I think it's just like, maybe you could really tune into the feeling of how you want to feel. How do you want to feel when you have that job, or when you're, doing something that really lights you up, and really try to embody whatever that feeling may be, and coming up with a positive affirmation around that. And repeating that as much as you can, and tapping on it and seeing what else comes up, and there can be limiting beliefs around it too, because sometimes it might not even feel possible.
Like, am I crazy? Am I crazy for leaving my job? Even though I feel crazy for leaving my very stable job, I deeply and completely love and accept how I feel now, and just really, because I was the same way. I was actually like Clark Kent, Superman. I was like at work, all professional, and then after work, I'm in a different, I looked hippie, I was like, okay, I'm like, it was like a different Tanya, So but no one knew until one day this light switch went on, and I went in and told my boss. I didn't even say I wanted to resign. I said, I think I want to resign. I think I want to move across the country. And she looked at me like, you think? And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like, well, what's the time frame? And I'm like, I don't know, get out a calendar. Let's look at it and see what works, because I had created my business on the side. Now, I wasn't to the point of where I could financially sustain it, but I knew I was putting more energy into something I didn't want to do than what I did want to do. And so it was just really funny. And then I kind of told her, I've been doing this on the side and I'm enjoying it, and I really want to dive into it more. And so, yeah, it was really funny. I just kind of one day was like, I'm done with this, and I'm a pretty planned out person. So this was not in my nature to do this, but the EFT tapping, I was just busting belief systems and busting blocks. And think, when our family and our friends, or even our coworkers, they see us change, it rattles them a little bit, because then they start to question, well, maybe I should change too. If she's following her heart and her dreams, or he, then what do I want to do? Maybe I'm not happy in this job either. So it really takes, when someone steps out of the matrix, or the box, or whatever we want to call it, so to speak, and they create their own path, it makes others question that too, And yeah, so that was kind of funny. I remember that was like 5 or 6 years ago, and so I was like, and I didn't even tell anybody. It's like I resigned, and for like a month, I didn't even tell I didn't tell anybody. I just told my boss. That was it. I was like, I didn't want all the backlash, and so, yeah, because I knew it was like I was leading this little secret life on the side, with my clients and whatnot. But when it got to sharing it with other people, even at the end, the last week that I shared it, there's all healthcare workers, and I told them what I was doing, and they looked at me like, I mean, jaws were dropping, eyes were open, like, how are you leaving this stable job to go to? And I'm like, yeah. And the funny part is, I didn't even know where I was moving. I just knew I was moving across the country. I didn't even know
Wow.
until a week before. So it was like, I surrendered so much. But then what happened is when I got across the country and I got across, it started my business, and I'm like, my whole body went into resistance. And that's where I needed to use the tapping. That's where I was like, okay, my whole body's in fight, flight, or freeze right now because I quit my job. I moved across the country. I'm all alone. And so that's where EFT tapping really came in, to that. And so, when you're working with people, have you had any experiences with that where someone has made such a drastic change after a tapping session? Have you recognized that before?
Oh yeah, yeah. And sometimes it does happen, after one session there will be that like aha moment, and you can see like a massive shift, and that has happened. And then, well, I had a session last week, and I've been working with this woman for probably like 9 months now. And in this one particular session, like the energy was totally different. Like everything was different. And I was like, can we just like pause here? I just want to call out like how much of a shift there has been since we first started. And she didn't even, we paused, and it was kind of like, whoa,
Yeah, and she probably was like, this is normal now,
Right, yeah, because like once you're able to really like peel back those layers and get to the root of what's really going on, you're able to find such freedom, and such peace within. I've also had sessions where, like I was saying, where in one session you can notice a distinct difference. I had a woman come to me who had pain in her shoulder, and it had been chronic pain. She had had all sorts of tests run, everything, came back normal. And then, we started getting as specific as we could on what the pain felt like in her body. And that, and then she used the words like, it feels like I'm being strangled. And after she said those words, there was she had a pause, and she was like, I've never said that before. I don't think I've ever realized that that's how it felt. And then asking questions about how long has this been going on for, what was going on in your life when it was happening. And it turned out that it had started when she left her husband, and it was an abusive situation, and she's been fighting in the courts for her kids. And so there's been all this other stress like on top of it that's kind of been amplifying it. But that's when it started. And then once there was a recognition around that, the pain released.
Yeah. And
And
so that financial stress in itself, I mean, I get that with clients. They have the neck pain, the shoulder pain, the burdens, and the back pain is financial stress, and worrying about finances. And when our body is feeling that pain, there's a restriction in there. There's some sort of resistance, right? From an emotional standpoint. And until we can really get in there and tackle it and see, what it is. And for her, having all that stress of everything that she was going through, it was manifesting is in her shoulder and in her neck, and so it can manifest anywhere, but oftentimes financial stress is in the back, so you just don't feel supported, and I've got, it's funny, this morning I had a friend post that she just gets on Amazon and when she's stressed and buys stuff. And so I said, well, that's funny. I'm doing a podcast today on emotional health and a financial wealth, and that's true because, many of us have been programmed in our childhood to receive comfort either through food or shopping or, things that, maybe our parents were like, oh, you had a bad day at school. Let's go to McDonald's, or, hey, let's go shopping, and buy things.
Yeah, whatever is going to distract you from feeling, whether it's the physical or the emotional pain, right? And for different people, that's different things. And it's really recognizing that and having awareness around it is so important, because then when you have that kind of awareness, like, oh, I'm having this craving right now, I'm not really hungry, or I really want to go shopping but I really don't need anything,
Yeah.
like it's like, okay, what's really going on here? Because there is clearly an emotional thing that's going on, and you're trying to cover it up by doing something else. And so once you can begin to recognize that in yourself, that's the first step. And then you can figure out what tools you're going to use to really help you identify, okay, what's really going on? Maybe I need to sit with the fact that I'm really frustrated that this deal didn't go through, or that, I haven't signed a client this month, or whatever is really bothering you, and allow that to move through you so that you don't have to go spend money you don't need to spend, or go
Yeah, and
eat
then
the
feel
chocolate
guilt
cake.
afterwards because you're like, oh, now I feel guilty because I just spent all this money and now I want to go return everything. And when I was in my marriage, which wasn't a healthy marriage, I loved to go to Home Goods. I loved to go to TJ Maxx. I loved to go, any home store. I just loved it. And I became, I accumulated a lot of cool kitchen stuff that I never really used, but I think for me at the time, it was kind of an escape for me. It felt good at the moment, kind of like any addiction. It feels good at the moment, but then it doesn't feel good after the fact, And so I knew when EFT tapping was working for me, when I could go to those stores and just browse and not purchase, because I went for the fun of just seeing what was there and browsing, but not actually making all these purchases of frivolous things that I had done before, because I was trying to find comfort in something because my relationship was struggling, at the time. And it could be, your job, or, I had friends who hated their job, and at their lunch break, they would go spend hundreds of dollars, just going to buy stuff, going clothes shopping, for 30 minutes. And then they would come back to work and be like, I feel terrible. I just spent $300, at the store, and I now have to hide it from my husband or my wife, or, whatever. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So yeah, so our emotional well-being, if we have highs and lows, can definitely affect our financial well-being, because
100%.
because we could be spending, frivolously, or if we're hoarding, that's the opposite too, because that energetically is making you feel lack. Right. So if we're falling into that lack, that we have to save, and we can't give, then that's creating energetic vibration that you don't have enough, and
Yeah.
it's like a scarcity program. And so what are some other things that you think come up around emotions and finances that might be helpful or valuable to people?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you were just saying about like holding on and hoarding things, it's also like I feel like people do that for safety, right? It makes them feel safe if they are able to hold on to their stuff, or you know, um, it's just so interesting how we will naturally revert to these things that have been shown to us, like, and that's likely some sort of behavior that you've picked up from a family member, right, from your from your parents,
Exactly.
and
Mhm.
yeah. And so I think it's just really important to just be very mindful, being very mindful of how you're feeling, and then what it is you're thinking about, or what it is that you're doing. And one of my favorite exercises is to like program on my phone a little alarm that'll pop up, and it says, how am I feeling right now?
Oh, I
So
love that.
just allowing yourself to really take a pause and be like, how am I feeling right now? If the answer is awesome, I'm feeling great, okay, cool, but what am I thinking about? And so beginning to create that connection between how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking about. And so then if the answer is like, I'm really frustrated right now, same thing, what am I thinking about?
Mhm.
And so once you can begin to create those connections, like, how am I feeling, what am I thinking about, what actions am I taking,
Mhm.
um, that can begin to help you think about things differently, or recognize, okay, when I'm thinking about this, I start to feel really bad. Maybe I can focus my attention on this other thing that helps me to feel better, and because as humans, we think so many of the same thoughts. Like, I don't remember what those studies, right? Like, about how we think this
Over and over.
over again. And if they're not helpful thoughts, well, that's just a waste of energy.
Well, and many of us don't even realize we're thinking it over and over and over and over again, and until maybe you start journaling it, and then you see the patterns every day, and you're like, whoa, I think the same thought, 27 times a day, or, whatever you notice. But it's just being, like you said, being more mindful and consciously aware. One technique I like is called the cancel technique. I don't know if you've heard of that, but It's where if you recognize a negative thought comes up, you literally stop in your tracks and say, cancel, cancel. And you can tap on it if you want to, and then you replace it with a more positive thought. And I've had to do that several times where it's like I get in a loop pattern on something that I know isn't beneficial for me. And then I have to stop myself. It's like, no, this is not going to continue. Cancel, cancel. And then literally in my mind, I visualize it like just sweeping away, it's like cancel, cancel, sweep away, and you can tap. But yeah, and that's helped me several times. And it's just being mindful, being consciously aware of the autopilot, going on in the back of the mind, right?
Yeah. And I think particularly in business, that's so important because as entrepreneurs, like it can be easy to get caught up in the, oh, this didn't work, or, oh, I haven't signed a new client, or I didn't make as much money this month as I wanted to. And you can kind of just get caught in that cycle, like you were talking about, of these negative thoughts. And then it's stopping and asking yourself, what do I need to think in order to make this better? Like what's the new thought, right? And that can be helpful too. It's like, but again, it all comes back to being mindful and being aware that you're doing this. And the more that you kind of check in with yourself, the more you'll begin to be able to recognize that you're getting yourself caught up in these patterns.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised probably once you first start doing this, how often those patterns repeat themselves, because once you become more mindful of them, it's like, whoa, I had no idea that I was the one who was blocking my prosperity in my life, because maybe I was, doubting myself, or I would hear a voice in the back of my mind of my mom or dad saying, you could never achieve that. Being an artist doesn't make money, or, starving artist, or, whatever your programming is, checking in and then asking yourself, hey, is that even my belief? Like, there's a lot of artists out there who are making buco dinero, so it's like, it's really just reprogramming your thoughts. And then on a few episodes ago, I had a gentleman come on talk about the 4 parts of the brain. You've got your creative, emotional, and your thinking brain, and then your survival brain, and so it's really shifting too from that thinking brain and maybe bouncing over to your creative brain. When you notice your thoughts are spiraling, go outside, take a walk, or pick up the paintbrush, or, start writing, or, whatever it may be. Try to flip from the thinking mind over to the creative mind, which will put you in the flow state, which will then bring in more prosperity and prosperity, not always money, but it could be inspirational ideas, or motivation, or, in a variety of ways. So when we talk about abundance, it doesn't always just mean money. I think everybody thinks that's what it means, but
true.
right?
True.
But abundance can be anything, it could be anything, an abundance of relationships, quality relationships, or an abundance of opportunities, that might move you out of the stagnancy, that you could be stuck in. So yeah, I think that's important, it all starts with catching yourself, in the thoughts. And if you find yourself, oh, I got to go out shopping, or, oh, all you're trying to do is soothe yourself. And, can you soothe yourself in a more healthy way?
Right. No, that's
exactly. Hit your bank account.
Right. And it's interesting too, like with self-sabotage, right? Sometimes we get so used to struggling in whatever way that becomes quote unquote normal, right? Like I was just talking to a friend who, she's had all these issues around wanting a relationship and being in a relationship, and now she's in a great relationship and she's so happy there, but now she's having issues with her business. And it's like, we talked about, well, oh, maybe there's something there. It's like, oh, maybe, I'm self-sabotaging in some way with my business, because now things are good with the relationship stuff, where everything was really great with the business before, but now it's like flip-flopping. And maybe it has something to do with the fact that, like, I'm used to having a struggle. I'm used to having something to, worry about, or something like that. And so, beginning to explore that. And
or I can't have it all. I can't have the relationship and the business and be happy all at the same time, because we got to pick and choose. It's just, you know, you either have the relationship or you have the business. You can't have both. Who says that? You know, that's what our little ego mind says oftentimes in the back, you know, in the back of our head. And I think that's, you know, and energy flows where our attention goes too. So if you're putting 90% of your attention into the relationship and only 10% into the business, then of course it's probably going to, you know, the energy's not there as much. So it's like, you got to get to a point where you're like, okay, I've got to find harmony and balance, you know, in this as well. And ask yourself, what limited belief system do I have, you know, running on the program in the back of my mind, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's identifying those limiting beliefs and then getting to the root of where they really came from so that you can release them, so that they aren't keeping you stuck in whatever way they're keeping you stuck in your life or in your business.
And so what are some good tapping, what do you think are some good tapping statements around prosperity and finances?
Yeah. Maybe, you know, I guess if you're not feeling very prosperous, right, or abundant, like, even though I'm not feeling abundant right now, I love and accept myself. Or even though I'm not feeling abundant, I'm ready for this to shift. I'm open for change. I'm calling in change. That sort of thing.
Or even though I'm not feeling prosperous, I open myself up to allow receive, you know, to receive, you know. I think we block ourselves too, because for example, I can definitely speak on this on my behalf. People, when I started to open myself up to receive, people would offer me things like, I can I can do this for you, or I can do that for you. And immediately I was like, no, I got it. No, I got it. No, I got it. Well, what I was doing is the universe was like, giving me opportunities to receive, but I was shutting it off because I kept thinking, oh, I have this. Oh, I got it. I don't need that. Versus now I say, thank you. I receive it. Thank you. I receive it, because I was also kind of bribing that, or, you know, robbing them, I guess, of their ability to give because they wanted to give.
Right, you know? Because people enjoy giving, and they want to do it. They want to be helpful. And so, yeah, and I'm the same way. And that was a lesson that I really had to learn while my husband was on deployment, was accepting help, right? Like, I had people offering help, and I just kept in the beginning, I was really felt like, oh, no, I have to do this all on my own. And so learning how to accept help. And are you familiar with Tosha Silver?
No.
She's an author, and she has I have it right here, actually. It's this. She has a divine abundance deck.
Oh, I love it.
Deck. And then she also has this, she has several books, and in one of the books there's an abundance prayer, and with the idea that you repeat the prayer. And I have that written down, and I love that prayer, and I read it every day, and it just helps you to get into that mindset of not only accepting, you know, being open to accepting the gifts, but also being open to giving, as freely giving, right? So that's just that energetic exchange of, you know, you're willing to open up your heart and give, and you're also willing to receive, and having both of that, you know, having that flowing is important.
Absolutely. And because it's like, when you give, you receive, when you receive, you give. It's like this circle. And you know, I started to notice a correlation with my clients when they would have a heart wall or a block, you know, around their heart, whether it be from relationships or their childhood or anything. Really, it could be anything why we create walls around our heart. But I was noticing when I would assist them with opening up their heart walls, their abundance would start to flow in, like in a variety of ways, you know, like we clear a heart wall, and then they had, you know, maybe three people asked them out on a date or something, you know, if they were single, or, you know, maybe we unblocked their heart and then they got 3 job offers or something like that, or, you know, something along those lines. And so I started to notice that correlation, that when we follow our heart and when we have an open heart, we naturally will organically align with who we are and what we're meant to do. And once we do that, we're naturally in alignment with prosperity, with abundance, with, you know, giving and receiving, because there's a nice harmony and balance there. And so, you know, I think many of us, including myself, was programmed at least as a female, that I don't need to rely on a man. I don't, you know, I can do all this on my own. And so when I moved across the country and I had no support, I didn't know a soul here, immediately it manifested in severe back pain because I had no support. And that's when I had to move through that, and tapping, I could not get out of bed. I couldn't walk for 3 months because
Wow.
I was my body had locked up so much that I was in such severe pain. The only thing I could do was tapping and muscle testing. I could use my applied kinesiology. And so I was kind of forced to heal myself emotionally and energetically and spiritually over the physical, because the physical, if I was putting stuff on me, oil, whatever I was doing was not working. I mean, I didn't even smoke weed ever. And I was like, fine, I'll smoke weed. I was going to do anything to take the pain away. I mean, I got to a point where I honestly told my dad, now I know why people kill themselves, because of this excruciating pain. Like, you just want it to go away. And I had worked in healthcare watching the other side of people, commit suicide and whatnot. And so it was very humbling for me to be in those shoes of that pain, because I was in emotional pain and in physical pain, and it was manifesting so bad, in my nervous system and in my body. My fight, flight, or freeze was just on overdrive. And so if once, and I tell my clients that once you learn the points, create your own script, whatever you need. And then if you're in those situations where you're in excruciating emotional pain, like when my grandmother died, immediately I just sat in bed. The moment I found out, got off the phone and just started tapping through the emotions. And when you have this knowledge, of EFT tapping, it's something you can do it in the moment, anytime. Maybe you're having a panic attack, and you don't have to do the whole gamut, the 9 gamut, it's just pick whatever feels comfortable, for you, whatever it is, and just breathe and tap and say the statements. And who cares what the statement is? Just say how you feel,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes such a difference to be able to, because it's a tool that really helps you to sit with how you're feeling, because like we've talked about, we don't like feeling those we don't enjoy feeling those intense emotions. And so we often shove them down, and then they end up manifesting themselves physically or emotionally later on. So if you're able to, identify what it is that you're feeling and just tap, even if you're using a few words on just one point, it's going to make a difference, so that that energy isn't going to be trapped in the body, but instead you can move through it. Because, energy wants to move, and our emotions want to move. Emotion, the definition of emotion is energy in motion. Like, the energy wants to move. And so it's our job to figure out how to get that energy moving in a way that works for our bodies. And and the journey that got me here, I'm grateful for. I never would have, anticipated that I'd be doing energy work in my
I don't
life.
think any of us did, Lauren. I think we all just kind of based off of our own healing, it's like we were guided to different modalities and what would work. I wish, I look back at a time I was working in healthcare, and I was working with grieving families and death and loss. And as an empath, I was picking up on everybody's energy, everybody's emotions. And I got to a breaking point one day at Target. Like, I was at Target sniffing candles and I literally broke down. I started hyperventilating, crying so hard. I just slid to the floor. I was holding a candle and I was sobbing my eyes out. And this woman walks up to me and she's like, "Sweetheart, are you okay? Are you okay?" I couldn't even respond to her because I was crying. All that energy all those emotions that I had buried down, my emotions, everybody else's emotions, all the families that I worked with had been buried deep inside of me, and they all came out at Target, and so you never know when that's going to happen. Had I had EFT tapping at that moment, I could have gathered myself. I could have gathered myself, but that was kind of a springboard for me moving into energy healing and having a deeper understanding of how our emotions do get trapped in our body. And our emotions, not just ours, but others' emotions we can pick them up too. So, but I think EFT tapping is one of those tools that I think everybody, that and applied kinesiology, muscle testing, I feel like those are 2 tools that you don't need anything other than your hands. It's something that's so simple that you can use in the moment, anytime, anytime. specifically
yeah,
during a
exactly.
panic attack, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I mean that was my experience. I started having panic attacks, and that's when I knew like I needed to figure something out. And I think what I love about tapping in particular is that it can be used proactively on a daily basis just to acknowledge how it is that you're feeling, and then reactively in those situations where, you know, the overwhelm and the stress and anxiety is hitting you full force in the moment. And it's funny that you share the Target story, because I often tell people, like, if you start to have a panic attack when you're in Target and
Why is it always Target?
you
Had I
don't,
met you prior and known that, I could have worked through that.
like, if you don't want to be like online in Target, like tapping yourself on the head and having people be like, what is that crazy woman doing? Like, I always share the finger points and how you can just squeeze the fingers, and, you know, doing the same thing is sending that message to the amygdala, and it helps them to reduce the amount of cortisol. And that
We're just, you know, there's a reason why we do these things, you know, why we put, oh, you know, because we're hitting acupressure points, you know, when we hit these, you know, and why we, you know, there's a reason for that. You know, we intuitively know where they are, you know,
right.
and
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's exactly, we like our bodies innately know what to do to help us feel better, and then adding, you know, adding in, and I think that the somatic practice of it, like actually physically tapping and focusing on how it is that you're feeling, there's just something so cathartic about that. And I think, you know, I know a lot of my clients struggle with meditating. They come to me and they say, I can't meditate, I have too many thoughts and all this. And I'm like, all right, well, let's start with tapping, because you can just like tap and talk as if you're talking to a friend about all the stuff that's going on in your mind that you've got going on. And doing so allows you to hold space for what it is that you're feeling and what you got going on up there. And then I think of it almost as like, you know, sweeping all those thoughts to the side so that you can then more easily meditate, you know, or last a little bit longer and taking those deep breaths and coming back to yourself. I mean, these are all practices that how I refer to as coming home to yourself. They all help you to come home to yourself and get in alignment with your higher self, and feel good in your body, physically, emotionally, mentally, all of it. Like, because we deserve
and resetting your nervous system, that, you know, most of us are in that sympathetic nervous system, that fight, flight, or freeze, when it's like, we should be, our natural state is parasympathetic. I mean, that's that rest and digest stage. And, you know, most of us, if we're living a stressful lifestyle, you know, we are constantly in sympathetic nervous system. And so tapping will rebalance that. It rebalances the hemispheres of the brain. It resets the central nervous system. And oftentimes financial issues cause a lot of stress, you know, with people. So it's like, if you've got stress at work, you've got stress in a relationship, and then you add financial stress on top of it, you know, that's like the trifecta of, you know, causing someone to have a panic attack or to have anxiety. And then when you get into those states of stress, anxiety, or even fear, then you might want to frivolously spend, or you may want to frivolously kind of hold on to your money. It could go either direction. And so it's just getting to a point of understanding that there is no lack, you know, there is no lack. We are always in a state of abundance. It's just overcoming our thoughts around that.
And I don't, is it Dr. John Kehoe? I don't
Oh,
know.
I've heard of John Kehoe. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm forgetting. I have his book, but I don't think it's right here. But anyway, he has a book and it talks about abundance, and it's this idea of, okay, if you don't have an abundance of money, what do you have an abundance of in your life, right? And so in the book, he was like in a cabin in the woods, and he's by himself, and he had, I mean, it wasn't even a lot, it was like 10 grapes. I mean, he's like, I have an abundance of grapes, right? And then he would go for a walk, and he's like, and I'm surrounded by an abundance of trees. And so it's just beginning to shift your mindset, you know, from what we talked about earlier, like abundance is not just money, but recognizing where there is abundance in your life. Maybe you have an abundance of love, and you've got a husband, and you've got kids, or whatever it may be, and focusing on that, and energetically like harnessing that feeling, or embodying that feeling. And then, you know, inviting in, like, you know, the abundance of money, if that's what you want, or the abundance in the relationship, or whatever it may be, but focusing on where it is that you do have it in your life. And if you don't have it anywhere in your life, focusing on someone, like looking up to someone that does have it, and like how you think it would feel to have that sort of abundance too. That could be a helpful practice too.
Totally. And not being, I think our natural human tendency is to be jealous of someone who has abundance. But what that does is it creates lack within us. So I've gotten to the point where, you know, when I come across people who are doing awesome in their life, I praise them. I'm like, that's amazing. Like I strive to be like that, you know? And I've even at the grocery store, she's like, oh, you saved 7 cents. I'm like, abundance, you know? I mean, so it's like, you know, just the little things in a life. I say that word, you know, I am prosperous or, you know, whatever, because I am statements are very powerful. And that's what we use in EFT tapping oftentimes, or I am statements too, you know? And so just shifting our mindset and our vision just a little bit to see what we do have a lot of versus what we don't, you know, have a lot of. Because I think as humans, we're naturally programmed to focus on, you know, what we don't have or the complaints or the negativity or whatnot. But it's just really just flipping that around. And then once you do that in your inner world, your external world will begin to project that to you. And so, yeah, just shifting that. Well, Lauren, I appreciate you coming on today. How can people reach out to you if they want to schedule a session or they want to learn more? You know, where should they go to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on my website, which is mindshiftwithlauren.com. And then I have a few different free opportunities on my website. One is a masterclass about EFT, and that you can find at mindshiftwithlauren.com/masterclass. And I also have a 5-day mindset reset on there. So there's all sorts of goodies. You can go browse around and see what works best for you.
That's awesome. So I thank you so much for coming on, and I appreciate all that you're doing and helping people. And I know that, you know, you and I both have our own journeys and our own healing journeys. And that's what led us to learning about this modality and how powerful it can actually be. And I had actually manifested, this is funny, I'll end this program with this manifestation around EFT tapping. I was living in Florida at the time, and I had gotten an email about one of the huge EFT tapping conferences at Disney, and Dawson Church was going to be there. All the big dogs around EFT were going to be there. And it was like $1,200. And I'm like, I'm not paying that. I'm going to win this. Like, I'm going to manifest going to this conference. Well, I had actually submitted, you had to submit something that basically said why you wanted to, you know, be a part of this conference or whatever. So I submitted something in, like, say, November. And I think the program was in March or April. Well, in February, I got an email saying that you won this, and you have a free 4-day stay at this resort in Disney to attend this conference. And the funny thing is, I knew it. It was like I filled this out and I expected to receive this information. And then that's what catapulted me into learning EFT tapping, to using it on myself. And it was such a transformative experience for me that I had actually created myself. I had actually put myself out there and created. But had I not taken the time to A, fill out that form, B, believe in myself that I can do this, and C, deserve it, know that I'm worthy and deserving of it, then I wouldn't have had that experience. But the fact that it was right there, it was maybe a 30-minute drive for me, and I got to experience that. And I met so many amazing people and heard so many amazing transformative stories. And so, yeah, there's no limit to what we can manifest. And the reality is that I didn't manifest money. I manifested an experience. I manifested, going to this program and being a part of it. And so I think oftentimes we get caught up that we have to attract the money, but we can attract anything that we put our heart to and our mind to. Our thoughts are electric and our emotions are magnetic, and what we speak out is an amplifier, a broadcast. So, well, yeah. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate you coming on. Exactly. So I hope that this episode was of value to any of you out there who may notice some of these patterns, in our lives. And, I'm not saying Lauren and I are perfect, but not by any means. I got to work on this stuff daily.
Thank you so much for having me on. This was really awesome.
Yes. Thank you, Lauren. You deserve to navigate your life as an empath in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.thesoulcafe.org.